Hello and welcome to Fit News. I'm your host, Jen Shaver, and joining me today is a very special guest, Sue Bellingham, nutrition coach, speaker, and midlife women's warrior. Sue is on a mission to change the way women view what's possible with their body and their health midlife. At the age of 50, she found herself dangerously overweight and looking in the mirror wondering what happened. There were many pivotal moments that changed and which ultimately led to making a commitment to her changing her life. After losing over 100 pounds without dieting or deprivation and gaining massive strength, she knew she had to show other women what was possible midlife and beyond. Sue, thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to chat with you.
Jen, thank you for inviting me to come and speak today. I'm really excited to share a little bit about me and what's possible for women of my age.
Right. Because I think the sentiment that looking in the mirror and wondering what happened, and I feel like I have talked with many clients too who have said, "Gosh, I looked in the mirror and I just didn't even recognize who I had become."
And that's true. And that happened for me aged 49. I was getting ready for work one morning, and I checked myself in the mirror before I left the house, as I did every morning.
Right.
But this particular morning, I actually saw the real reflection that was staring back at me, and Jen, it cut right through my heart, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize the woman in the reflection at all. And you probably heard this from many other women, but for me it was one of the pivotal moments. I dropped to my knees and I sobbed, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. And I had to call in sick that day, and I had to call in sick the next day as well, and the day after that, because I needed a moment I needed that time to be able to gather my thoughts and basically come up with a plan of how I'm supposed to get that reflection in the mirror looking somewhere near respectable.
Mm-hmm.
And it came as a big shock, but listen, the woman staring back at me was very much my mother. And she was another big reason why I needed to do something about my weight, my health.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mother was she was an amazing woman. She was a real gem, but in her mid-40s, she was very outgoing, very gregarious. She loved socializing. She loved hosting dinner parties. She was a fabulous cook. She was into amateur dramatics, and she used to put on shows and stuff. So she was one of those real sort of life's go-getter women.
Yeah.
But she started to experience health issues in her mid-40s.
Wow, that's young.
That is young.
Yeah.
But it's when I think about it, it's not really surprising, because she was very much a party girl. So there was always going to be too much smoking, too much drinking, too much eating of the wrong foods, and unfortunately, these things catch up with you in time, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened for her. And so from her mid-40s onwards, her health deteriorated quite rapidly until in her 60s. She actually she became this recluse, which was very not like her. She didn't want people coming around to her house, including me from time to time.
Wow.
If I'd arranged to go and stay with her for the weekend, she would sometimes ring up and go like, "No, this is not a good weekend, love," because she was that infirmed by everything she had going on for her, that she couldn't clean her house properly, she couldn't look after herself properly, and it was heartbreaking to watch. And there was this one day, they lived in a two-story house, and she was going upstairs one day, and she had a panic attack midway up the stairs, and that was it. She decided, once she got to the top eventually, that she was never coming down again. And that's what happened. So unfortunately, when a fire broke out in their home, in their kitchen, due to a faulty toaster, she was trapped up there and she couldn't get out. and she passed away. I was actually on the phone to her that particular evening. We were having a conversation, and she just cut that conversation off so abruptly. And what I know now is that she did that so she could call the fire brigade to report the fire. And the first I knew about it was when the police came knocking on my door at 11:30 that night, telling me what had happened, and that I needed to get to the hospital as quickly as possible because both she and my stepdad were in there very poorly. So I raced over there. It was 2 hours away, in a town that I'd never been to before. And I didn't know my way around. And I got there at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And she passed away shortly after that. And then the following day, we switched off the life support that my stepdad was on as well. So in that one split moment, because both of them were not in the best of health.
Right.
Yeah, so here I was, aged 50, looking at my mother's reflection in the mirror and deciding that I'm not going to walk down the same path as my mum did, because
Right.
I was already experiencing health issues. I already had the pre-diabetes. I already had the underactive thyroid. I already had the very high blood pressure. So I was starting down that route. And that was my catalyst. That day that I saw my mum's reflection in the mirror was the day that I kind of decided, like, no, this is not for me. But so that's when things needed to change. But I didn't know what to do.
Right. Right.
And I think for a lot of women, myself, I've been dieting since I was a teenager.
Right.
That's when my issues started.
Yeah.
And as much as I dieted and I tried literally all of them,
Right.
I only ever got heavier and heavier and heavier as each year went by.
Right.
So dieting wasn't going to work.
Right. Well, because
so
most of them were very restrictive, I'm sure. You know, it was always some form of restriction, no matter what the diet was. It was just extreme, and, you know, cutting something completely out, and then
because that's the way, that's unfortunately what the diet industry is all about.
Right.
Now, my weight loss journey began purely by accident.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, purely by accident. When I say there were several pivotal moments in my life that started me on the right path, one of them was I had been carrying around a lot of rage inside of me for a very long time. And I was playing golf one day, and towards the end of the round, I missed literally a 2-foot putt. And that was just enough to have this explosion of rage come out of me. And it was ugly.
Yeah.
And it was embarrassing, and I was ashamed. And this was the point where I knew I had to address that. Right. That was my most immediate concern there, right then. Because if it happened once, it was going to happen again unless I did something about it.
Right, right. Especially, you know, not knowing what's going to trigger it, right? If something that you do for fun was a trigger, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it could have been anything. It just happened to be that thing that day.
Right.
So I found somebody to help me, and I started working with him. And quite literally, Jen, after 3 months of, that's all we did. That's all we focused on was the rage. What was triggering it, why I was reacting the way I was reacting. Yeah. And literally everything was so trivial. There was nothing major in there, but just something so trivial would invoke this huge reaction in me. Right. So we needed to get to why I was reacting like that. So that's all we did. And 3 months into this work, I again was getting ready for work one morning, and I pulled on my trousers, and they were loose. Wow. And it was like, oh, okay, I don't understand what's happening here. But I run straight to the bathroom and I stand on my scales. Jen, I had lost 14 pounds. Wow. Now, bear in mind,
in 3 months. Yeah, without changing your diet or exercise, adding in all this crazy stuff. It was just focusing simply, you know, on this rage. Yeah.
For sure. Because I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to do anything else other than
Right.
on this rage.
Yeah.
So now I'm curious, right?
Yeah.
And I am a lifelong student. I'm a very curious person. So now I have to find out what the connection is between releasing anger and weight. So I started off down that path. And what I listen, to cut a long story short, very short, my weight issues were nothing to do with I also went back to school.
Okay.
Because, as I worked with this guy for a few months more, the weight was steadily coming off.
Right.
And because of that, I thought, well, right, so now I really need to address my nutrition, because I don't want to go back on another diet.
Right.
Because they don't work. They
Right.
don't work. So I got to figure out how to do this properly. So I go back to school and I study nutrition. And literally the thing that I find is there was nothing wrong with my nutrition.
Right.
There wasn't. The only thing that was wrong was I was very much an emotional eater. So every time I had an episode of rage, I would eat cake. Every time I had an episode of grief, I would eat cake. Every time I had an episode of frustration or stress or whatever, it was cake, cake, cake. Sometimes chocolate, mostly cake.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why working with this guy, my weight started coming off, because the more work that we did, the more anger I was able to release, the less reliant I was on food. Right. To help me to get over an instance of rage, because they just weren't happening anymore.
Right. Because you were using the cake as your tool, basically. It was the tool to the coping tool. Yeah. And so through working through your rage and learning other techniques, you no longer had to turn to the food as the coping mechanism.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So that was quite the epiphany for me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there were a few things wrong with my nutrition. Obviously, portion size I needed to address, and maybe I ate a little bit too much carbohydrate and that sort of thing. But they were just minor things that really needed to be tweaked, right? So nutritionally, I was pretty sound. Yeah. It was the emotional side that was my big issue. Yeah. And it took me until I reached the age of 50, Jen, to realize that. Wow. Yeah. And I've worked with a few clients now, and the same thing. Been lifelong dieters, never been able to lose the weight, only gaining weight. When I have a look at their nutrition, it's usually pretty sound, but there is emotional baggage that needs to be dealt with. Right. And I don't think this is a topic that's talked about enough. Right. So this is kind of like my mission now, because look, for anybody who identifies as an emotional eater, there is no diet in the world that is ever going to work for them. Right. It's not, because all diets do is they restrict food. Right. So a diet is going to treat the symptom, which is weight gain, but they're not going to treat the root cause, which is usually something a little bit deeper. Right. Yep. Yeah. So it's like take this pill, right? Instead of looking into why do you need to take the pill, like what is causing the problem, right? Yeah. Just take this and move on. Yeah. And I mean, it's the same if you take a pill, you've got a headache, you take a pill to relieve the symptom of the pain that you've got going on in your head. But invariably, you could have been staring at a screen for too long. Maybe that's why you got the headache. It could be something to do with air pressure change, which is something that affects me. When we move from low pressure to high pressure, I get a headache. So yes, the pill is going to take away the pain. But if you're curious enough, try and figure out what is actually causing that pain. Is it that you've strained your eyes too much? Is it that what is it? Right. Is it a hangover? You never know, right? Right. Yeah. Yeah, so it's exactly that. If diets only mask
Mm-hmm.
They only mask the pain. They don't
Mm-hmm.
resolve the deep down.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
basically,
temporary. They are a
yeah,
temporary fix.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The real issue is some sort of emotional over desire for food.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And you have to
so
figure that out. What is that? What's
of
causing that?
course,
Yeah.
yeah. And for me, the more I dug into why I was emotional eating, I mean, oh my goodness, Jen, there were so many things. There were so
Mm-hmm.
many things. And one of the reasons I love working with women in midlife is, my God, they're amazing people.
Yeah.
Midlife women are amazing people. Um, Listen, the thing that I love about midlife women is that they carry multiple titles and multiple identities,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So that they're a worker, they're a mother, they're a housekeeper, they're the cook. They hold multiple identities and multiple titles.
Mm-hmm.
Midlife women know how to carry hurt and loss. They know how to hold the pain and the grief of their own stories locked away inside of them,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what they've been conditioned to do.
Right.
She has a number of experiences that are untold and unresolved. And for women at this time of life, it can often feel like they're walking towards the cliff edge instead of climbing to the highest peak.
Right.
Because with everything that's going on, I mean, really, is it any wonder at all that she might be having challenges with weight or with health?
Yeah.
Because often it's more complex than going on a diet to shed some body fat, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I love working with these amazing, complex, incredibly strong ladies.
Yeah.
And ultimately, this is why my business is called the Midlife Wellness Warrior.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe, Jen, that it is this women in midlife today. It is
Mm-hmm.
this generation of women in midlife that are going to be the world changers.
Right.
Because already, I mean, menopause is this thing that was never spoken about. Has always been a taboo subject until this generation of women are starting to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. There's commercials on the TV about it now.
Is there?
Yeah. We had one during the Super Bowl about menopause. So it is out there and it is starting to become a part of the conversation. And when you look at, what's going on in the workplace and how it affects women in the workplace, it's about time, because that these companies start to recognize it and start to offer, ways to manage and help the female population deal with it. So, yeah.
And that's amazing. I certainly know, when I was working my corporate job, I worked for a major global bank. And before I left 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they had started a menopause hub for female employees who were of that age.
Nice.
And but what I loved, my boss at the time was a guy who was a few years older than me, clearly married, clearly to a woman who had gone through menopause. And what I hadn't realized was, because I've always said, Jen, that I got away with the menopause. I didn't have any symptoms at all.
Yeah.
But, what I do know now is yes, I had this anger inside of me for such a long time. But I think actually the perimenopause and menopause exacerbated that quite a lot. And I'll tell you, and this is a God's honest truth. When I used to have one-to-ones with my boss, after the first couple, he started bringing tissues into the meeting room. Because I was an emotional woman. I would get angry. I would get angry at stuff that was going on in the workplace.
Right.
And when I get angry, I'm one of those women that just cries.
Yeah.
So every one-to-one I had with him was a, you know, I cried. And I thank God that he was married and his wife had gone through the menopause. He knew what was going on. I had no idea what was going on. I just thought I was going slightly mad.
Yeah.
But no.
But don't you think that there's a large percentage of women that feel that same way? Because they
100%.
don't know, they don't understand what the symptoms are. They just feel like they're having a, you know, out of body experience.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Listen, I don't want to get too deep into this, but there's kind of like when you, I suppose when you reach around about the age of 40, there's a kind of like an unconscious panic that wells up inside of us, and we don't necessarily, because it's unconscious, we don't recognize it for what it is. And then on top of that, you know, we're starting to have to deal with raging hormones and raging mood swings and unexplained weight gain, and literally nobody around you understands.
Right.
And they kind of like, what is wrong with you? You need help. You need to go and see somebody.
Yeah.
So this is the time of life where, you know, us girls can quite often feel completely misunderstood.
Right.
Completely misunderstood.
Yeah.
And but you know, as I say, it is this generation of midlife women who are changing all of that. And I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
But going back to my story, I mean, the more I started to dig into all of my triggers for emotional eating, literally my world changed.
Yeah.
My world changed. And look, you know, I suppose it's a little bit like, and I don't want to, I don't know if I can use this analogy, because I don't know if I'm doing this particular group of people an injustice, but, you know, for people who are maybe dependent on alcohol, and who go to Alcoholics Anonymous and sort of get clean,
right,
that urge to have a drink is always going to be there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with an emotional eater, because in fact I did in 2020. 2020, when the whole world was turned upside down because of the global pandemic. Right. This is when my emotional eating came back, and it was horrific.
Yeah.
Working from home, I mean, my God, for some people it was like Christmas had come in March. It was like all of their dreams had come true. It's like, yay, I get to work from home. I don't need to go into the office. But for me, it was literally my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So not
you're sitting 10 feet from the kitchen, right? 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that. But for me, it was like I didn't like the silence.
Right.
I look, I'm not the most conversational of people, but the office chatter,
right,
the conversations in the restaurants, the conversations that you have in the corridor at the coffee machine, just the buzz, that's what I missed. And it was affecting me emotionally. I was getting so depressed. In fact, there were a few days where I had to phone up my boss and said, look, I can't today. I can't, you know, I'm in tears because I just can't face another day of this.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, it turns out that being with my partner 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year wasn't good for me either. Yeah. And if I'm brutally honest, that relationship hadn't been working for a while. So it was like my emotional eating comes. It was almost like a here's Johnny moment.
Right.
It was like it was like this guy was breaking down the door to my life and coming in and going, hey Sue, hey, I'm back.
Remember me?
Yeah, remember me? I'm here to give you 30 pounds of the 100 pounds that you've already lost. I'm here to give it to you back.
Right.
On ice.
Yeah.
It was like,
right.
It was like, this is my gift to you. Well, thanks
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
So, now I have bigger decisions to make. Like, what am I
Mhm.
going to do about this? Because I don't want to be back in this place,
Right.
back to emotional eating again. What am I going to do about this?
Yeah.
So after 1 year, it was in March 2021,
Hmm.
I walked away from my job.
Hmm.
And a couple of months after that, I walked away from my relationship as well.
Yeah.
Because, look, no matter how scary the world was at that time, I literally had to ask myself, what was actually scarier, right? Was it
Right.
scarier to continue living a life that was crushing me
Hmm.
from all sides?
Yep.
Or was it scarier to get rid of the things that were causing me the angst and the depression and creating this emotional eating again?
Yeah.
I had to ask myself what I valued most. And it wasn't easy.
Right.
It wasn't easy, Jen, but what I valued most, as it turns out, was I valued my emotional freedom
Hmm.
and my inner peace over financial security and being in a relationship which well, as I said, hadn't been working for a while.
Hmm.
And I do wonder how many other women out there are compromising what they value most.
Right.
And maybe that's why they continuously find themselves, at the crumbs of a cake, or at the end of a box of donuts, or
Hmm. Right.
at the bottom
Right.
of a packet of biscuits, because at some point, and midlife is the best time to do it, you have to start putting yourself first. You have to
Hmm.
start putting your needs first.
Right. And asking those hard questions like you asked yourself, and being
Yeah,
honest with the answer
yeah,
that you're giving yourself.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So when I talk about putting yourself first, I mean, I
Hmm.
did that when I
Right.
ended my relationship. I put
Hmm.
myself first when I
Hmm.
left my job, because I refused to be hostage to that friction in my life anymore. I'd had
Yeah.
enough,
Right.
you know.
Hmm.
And I'm grateful that the work I'd done, the personal development work I'd done in the preceding years, the years preceding the pandemic, where I focused on sort of mindset and self-care.
Right.
I learned that, you got to listen to those inner voices.
Yeah.
I don't require that job for my financial security, because, when I feel better, I
Yeah.
am able to see what I want more of in my life. And when I'm able to see what that is, then I know I'm following what feels purposeful.
Hmm.
I'm following what sparks me. And it's led to things like coaching women in midlife, because, I've walked that path,
Right.
because I know what it's like to look in that mirror and feel so disgusted with yourself.
Hmm.
And I know what it's like to find myself, at the end of an entire chocolate cake.
Yeah. Yeah. So
you know
let me ask, Sue, when you so you do you work with women now, and how do you help them?
Yeah, I do work with women now. So
Hmm.
primarily the women that come to me for weight loss.
Hmm.
Now look, I have four pillars of health in my business, and so those are self-care, mindset, nutrition, and movement. Because, oh, Jen, you're a fitness
Hmm.
instructor.
Hmm.
Um, Strength training for us girls in midlife
Yeah.
is so incredibly important.
Right.
So it's my final pillar, but
Hmm.
it's as important as the other three.
Right.
So yeah, a
Right.
woman will come to me because they want to lose weight, and they come to me asking for, what's the best diet to go on.
Yeah.
Listen,
Right.
I'm never going to recommend. No, there is. If anybody asks me to recommend a diet, one that's going to work, the only one that I will ever ask anybody to follow if they weren't working with me is the Mediterranean diet.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because that's perfect,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, I need to lose weight. I need to, I've got a wedding coming up. I need to fit into I need to look good. I
Hmm.
need to feel good. What can you do for me? What's the best diet? Listen, I'm not going to put you on a diet. Yes, we'll have a look at your nutrition. But if you are somebody who has been a serial dieter for a very long time, then let's look at some other areas as well that might be affecting, you know, your inability to lose weight, your inability to stay on a diet.
Right.
So I'm never going to recommend that anybody cuts anything out of their diet at all. Yes, we'll have a look at. I'm very much macro based. It works for me, Jen. When I switched to focusing on macros, it was like the whole game changed for me, because now I'm focusing on what I can eat,
right,
and not what I can't eat.
Yeah.
You know, because for a long time, and people still do this, they tell you've got to cut out carbs. You got to cut out carbs if you want to lose weight. But do you realize how important carbs are for your general health?
Exactly.
Do you realize how much fat is important for your general health?
Yeah.
And fiber and protein, and especially because the thing is, for women in midlife, nutrition is important, of course it is. Yeah. But what worked for you, you have to do things slightly differently, right?
Yep.
So, you know, for women in midlife, let's have a look at increasing your protein intake. That's going to make a big difference.
Right.
Let's have a look at increasing how much fiber you're having in your diet, because that's going to make a big difference. Yeah. So there are things that you have to do slightly differently, but it's not a whole world difference.
Right.
And for women who are experiencing sort of menopause, perimenopause, or menopause symptoms, it's because, listen, before we enter perimenopause or menopause, us girls, we are given a lot of protection by estrogen. Yeah. A lot. But when that starts to reduce, this is when menopause symptoms start to occur. But, you know, so let's have a look at replacing some of the foods in your diet with foods that are high in phytoestrogens, because your body may be eliminating estrogen, the hormone, but you can replace that to a certain degree, right, by eating plants that are high in phytoestrogens. Right. So let's have a look at that as well. So it's not just one thing. Right. No, it's definitely multifaceted, right? So the lighthouse has 4 legs, and we need all 4 for it to stand. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But I like that you brought up the strength training. I mean, you brought up the protein, you brought up the fiber, and you brought up the strength training. So you were speaking my language, girl. Hey. I mean, there you go. That's what I am, you know, trying to hammer home with the midlife ladies, because I feel like when we are doing these restrictive diets, those are the things that go, right? The protein goes, the fiber goes. And then even if you are exercising, most of them are doing the cardio, and they're on an hour on the elliptical or whatever it might be. So they're not building any muscle, and they don't have any protein. I mean, it's just like a snowball effect. Of course. And another big thing with women is if they want to lose weight, they generally tend to over restrict their diet. Right. So I think you have to know how much energy, and everybody is different. You have to know how much energy your body needs, right? Right. And then you work with that. You create a calorie deficit off of that. Right. But if you take that, an extreme one, because that, like you were saying, too many people go to the extreme with that calorie deficit. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So many women I know now, when they say they're on a diet, they're sticking to 1,200 calories. Jen, my God, that's dangerous. Yes. That is so dangerous. And counterproductive. Of course. Yeah. Because you know, from listen, I'm not a fitness instructor. I listen, when I first lost my first 40 pounds, it was kind of like, this was the point at which I thought, okay, maybe it's now time to think about working on my fitness as well. And I did. I went and joined a gym and started working with a personal trainer. Yeah. And look, I've said before earlier on in this, I am a constant I am a student of life. I have to know how things work.
Yeah.
So while I'm working with a personal trainer, I'm questioning every exercise that we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing here? What do we do? How is this helping?
Yes.
And look, if we go back to nutrition side, if you over restrict your calories, yes, you will lose weight, but you're also going to lose muscle.
Yes.
And muscle is metabolically active.
Mm-hmm.
So the more muscle you have,
Yeah.
the greater your chance of being able to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
If you are losing muscle because you are over restricting your diet, you're going to get to a point where you're going to stall. You're going to reach that dreaded weight loss plateau because you can't. Your metabolism has slowed right down.
Right.
Because there's nothing to keep it revved up. So
Yeah.
yes, exercise did become incredibly important to me.
Yeah.
And so when I say I gained incredible strength, listen, I was in competition with my niece, who's 20, almost 30 years my junior,
Yeah.
and she was going to CrossFit training.
Oh.
So there she is at, I don't know, 20 something, and there's me at 50 something. And she's messaging me going like, I deadlifted 80 kgs today. And I'm going, oh God, my PBs are like only like 60. So I work on that and I get up to 80 and I go, yeah, I've got to 80. She goes, no, I'm 90 now. So it's like, oh my God. Okay. So I've got to work on that a little bit more. So, but listen, I had so many aha moments with the strength training as well, because I mean, who knew, Jen, that even something as simple as VMO leg raises can help to lessen knee pain.
Right.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I didn't, but that was a wonderful epiphany.
Yeah.
Because being somebody who's been incredibly overweight for a very long time, yeah, my knees were buggered.
Yeah.
And they hurt all the time. But you work on the muscles. Muscle protects bone.
Right. And that's and I think this goes back to, as you were, talking about your mother, who ended up not being able to leave the upstairs, right? So it was everyday tasks.
Yes.
That had become difficult, virtually impossible for her. And that's what's tragic. And that's what, we should all be keeping in mind is, what do we want the next 20, 30, 40 years to look like? What do we want our body to be able to do in that time? Not anything aesthetic, but, how do we want to feel? How do we want to be able to move? What do we want to be able to do?
Yeah, that's 100%. And I'm glad you brought that up, because you see it so often now that people work their entire life, and as soon as they get to retirement age, it's like they don't have the energy,
right, or
the strength to go and do what it is that they want to do. And in fact, unfortunately, some people drop dead as soon as they stop working.
Right.
And it all goes back to you're right. What you're doing now you shouldn't be focusing on what results you can get now. Everything that you're doing now should be your focus for what you want for you in 15, 20, 30 years time.
Right.
I can give you an example here. I have a lady who lives 5 doors down from me, down this way, whose name is Marjorie. She's 94. And I meet her every day when I'm out on my walk.
Wow.
She's out there striding. I mean, yes, she does take a walker with her, but she doesn't need it.
Yeah.
Apart from because the road slopes down like this. So when she's walking home, she's a little bit scared of falling over. So she takes her walker for that. 2 doors up from me, Pauline is 76, And literally when she walks up to the shop or goes out for a walk, she's shuffling her way up the road. So these are two ladies who have 20 years between them.
Right.
The one who's older and goes out walking and sort of keeps herself active all of the time is thriving. The one who sits in her home on her sofa watching TV all day is the one who is shuffling her way up the road.
Right.
So, you know, you have to choose which one you want to be. Do you want to be the 94-year-old active woman, or do you want to be the 74-year-old, 75-year-old lady who's hunched over and shuffling her way up the road?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I do. I'm not a member at the gym anymore, but when I quit my job in 2021, I needed a project to do. So I built this place that I'm sitting in here. I built this from scratch myself. So this half of it is my office. That half of it is my gym.
I love it.
So yeah, I've got all my dumbbells and weights and kettlebells and TRX ropes and stuff. And I work out on my own here at home. Because of everything.
And that's perfect. You know, and I think that's another thing that, you know, people need to understand, that you don't have to have a gym membership. It can be done in half of a room space, right?
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah. You just need a yoga mat. That's all you need.
Yep.
The space that a yoga mat takes up is
exactly.
all the space that you need.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, yes, I have all the equipment. But do I need it? Probably not.
Right.
I can do as an effective job without all of this equipment as I can with the equipment.
Yep.
And look, listen, Jen, you are never going to get me to love burpees. You are never going to get me to love the TRX ropes. There's a lot of things you're never going to get me to love. But
well,
you know,
Sue, you know that I don't approve of burpees, right?
I did not know that.
Yes. My workouts are burpee free for my ladies. Yes, and I don't.
Oh, I need to come work out with you.
No burpees allowed, no sit-ups allowed, no crunches allowed.
Sit-ups and crunches, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with. Okay, what is your burpee? Why no burpees?
I prefer to go a more functional route. In other words, how many times in your day have you ever had to perform that in real life?
That's very true.
That'd be never. You have never had to do any of that movement. And it's just a movement that is, you know, quite frankly, poses too much of an injury risk, because too many people get hurt doing them. And then once you're hurt, you're inconsistent and fall off the wagon. And if you ever come back, great, but sometimes you don't come back. So I'd rather just avoid that altogether. There are so many other exercises out there that can do so much more for you. So let's just skip them and move on.
Oh, Jen.
Yep.
Oh,
so
right. I will never do another burpee in my life.
I highly recommend skipping them personally, but you know, I also, you know, to each their own. So, you know, I don't judge people that want to do them, that like to do them. That's great. I personally do not do them, nor do I recommend them. So that's it.
That's good enough for me, Jen. You are a qualified personal trainer.
I've converted you.
If you say burpees are not required, then I am not doing burpees ever again. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But no, it's weird. It's weird when still talking about exercise. There were certain exercises that I did with the personal trainer that, for instance, the very first time I did a Palloff press, it was demonstrated to me, and I just looked at the personal trainer. I went, really? That looks just too easy. What is the point of this? And he's going, you think it's easy? Try it.
Yeah.
By God. They're not easy.
No.
But yeah, it's just the variety of stuff that you can do to just make an improvement in your life. You know, just listen, I suffered with back pain. I suffered with knee pain. I suffered with shoulder pain. But and the personal trainer obviously knew all of this, and we adapted some of the routines to suit what I could and couldn't do.
Right.
But you know, after a period of time, we didn't have to do the adaptions anymore, because you building up the muscles around the joints that are being affected.
Right.
just giving them
Right.
some sort of protection.
Right. Yeah. And we're talking about, you didn't do this when you were 20. You did this midlife. And I
Yeah.
think that's the important thing for women to hear, that, because a lot, oh, I have back pain, so I can't do this, or I have, my knees don't work like they used to, so I really can't do that. But all of that pain can go away just like yours did.
Yeah.
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 Big life lessons learned.
Yeah.
Big life lessons learned.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's been quite a ride. And listen, I am nowhere near the weight that I want to be. I still have an awful lot of weight to lose. But hell, it's when you understand,
Yeah.
what's going to help, when you understand why you are carrying that weight, when you understand all of this, and you have to, I always say that your weight is a direct reflection of your inability, is probably not the right word, of you not wanting to address the issues behind it. So yeah, unfortunately, sometimes you just got to get that little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And bite the bullet and face some shadows.
Yeah.
But it's 100% worth it.
Yeah. And possible.
100% possible as well.
Yeah. So if our listeners want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Very welcome to drop me an email.
Okay.
My email address is simply info@suebellingham.com.
Okay. And that's SueBellingham.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. And that's really about it.
Okay.
I don't have a big presence on social media. I mean, I do have a Facebook profile. I do have a Facebook page, but there hasn't been any activity on that for about 3 years now. And I occasionally go onto TikTok and put some videos up on TikTok, so you can possibly find me there, but don't hold your breath for content, because it's only as and when I feel inspired to do it.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I think the safest bet is, if somebody does want to contact me, I'd be happy to receive an email from somebody.
Wonderful. Well, Sue, we appreciate your time today, and we thank you for sharing all that you have.
It's been my pleasure, Jen. And once again, thank you for inviting me to come and talk on your podcast.
Of course.
It's been amazing.
Yes. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fit News. We will catch you next time.